Hello everyone, Vin Jelly here. Welcome to the studio, and today I'm going to be putting together a video featuring two attempts in watercolour at Portrait Artist of the Week version of Russell Tovey. He's quite a well-known actor. I first saw Russell on a programme called Being Human, where he played a werewolf, and so the first version that I paint in this video, I'm utilising the strange lighting effects that appeared on the programme quite late on, where strong shadow cast unusual shadow shapes onto Russell's face, and I was quite interested by that. I thought it was it evoked a werewolf almost. That's what I thought anyway. But so I'm having a go at that first, and that was kind of an experimental piece, and bits of it went really well, and I thought as a watercolour it worked quite nicely. There's some good colours going on and some quite interesting and unusual effects, and then during it I thought, well, I've got a lot of screenshots from the actual programme. I will make another attempt of a more conventional approach at a face, and I'm trying to make them more into paintings, watercolours, than just portraits. They're not just copies of what I saw on the screen. I want to make more of it somehow. So the first one, as I say, is more to do with evoking a kind of slightly unusual werewolf-like image, even though it's nothing like a werewolf. And the second one is much more conventional, but even so I'm exploring interesting lighting effects and colours using watercolour. So the bottom part of the face is fading into very soft blues and greens, whereas the top has more red blood under the skin and flesh colours. And I think his face is really interesting. I think it works really well. I hope you enjoy the video. Please leave comments if you did, and please like and subscribe to my channel. I much appreciate that if you do. So without further ado, here we go. So here's the screenshot I took of Russell. As you can see, it's quite blurred, the light's strange, and here's the final watercolour that I worked from that, also quite strange. And I start by drawing it out quite carefully, then transferring the drawing by a special tracing method, using paper rather than tracing paper, and I look for cools and warms, and I start using a kind of tonal mapping out of the form using cobalt blue, and then work over that with faint lights. Now with this strange shading, it meant building up a reasonable amount of dark areas, and I find watercolour and dark areas quite a tricky thing to do, and when you get it right it's fantastic, but often it can fail. So there's a lot of risk involved here, especially in that shadow that cuts across to his mouth. It's a bit of a sort of Joker-esque slash like strange effect going on around the mouth, and that was always a risk, because in the screenshot it's very blurred, not a lot of definition going on there, quite open to interpretation. So there's a risk of losing the likeness quite a lot. There's a risk of making it look very strange indeed. There's a certain filmic quality about this image, I think, and the way he's lunging forward. And as I said, he was a werewolf when I first saw him, and here's a Lon Chaney's famous werewolf, and here's Russell as the werewolf in Being Human. So this is what I was thinking about part of the time. So when I got to this stage I was putting on final touches and then pulling and pushing and wiping out small areas to try and adjust things. I think I'd gone far enough, because you can overdo watercolours quite easily, so just putting a few final reworkings and just trying to consolidate what I'd already done. So that's the final watercolour, the final first watercolour, and I decided from this that I would pursue another one, and so this is the drawing for the next one. It's a much more conventional portrait, but I'm approaching it in a very similar way in terms of painting by mapping out these areas with cobalt blue first, areas of tone, defining the form, and then working on top of that with quite warm yellows, oranges and pinks to define the fleshy areas. But because the 5 o'clock shadow type effect you often get on male Caucasians gives you this sort of bluish chin, I've used blues and turquoises, and I'm leaving that quite untouched. I'm keeping the whole thing very light in tone because I want to avoid really dark areas on this painting, and as you can see now, the form's coming out quite nicely already because of that shadow at the nose and the way he's squinting against the light. In the photograph, the shadow on the right hand side of the face and the ear were much darker than this, but I've kept them quite light. It's given me a great range of potential in terms of tone should I want to build it up darker, but actually I don't need to. I'm being restrained. I think with watercolour I find that less is often more. It's holding yourself back and stopping yourself from going too far. And the beauty with doing one version first is you can iron out quite a lot of problems and it helps you imagine the next version. That practice element is very important, I think, with watercolour. So anyway, here are the two paintings finished and next to each other. Hope you enjoyed it.